Hey everyone, I'm John Lynn, the founder and chief editor of Healthcare IT Today. We're excited to bring you another in our series of interviews with top leaders in health IT. And our guest today is PV Subarao. He's SVP Global Healthcare and Life Sciences at Rackspace Technology. Welcome, PV.
Thank you, John. Glad to be with you today.
Yeah, I always love learning from you, so excited to have you on the show to share your insights and perspectives with our audience. But before we dive into today's topic, tell us a little bit about yourself and Rackspace Technology.
Absolutely, John, and glad to be traveling with you on many of these events across different forums. I am PV Subarao, responsible for healthcare life sciences globally, and we at Rackspace are doing pretty incredible things in relation to the ecosystem of healthcare. But before we dive into healthcare, so a little bit of Rackspace. We are a hybrid multi-cloud solutions firm with an AI focus. And we've been in the business for the last 25 years, and we operate within private cloud as well as public cloud, and we have a very differentiated offering of AI called FAIR, Foundry for AI by Rackspace. And specific to healthcare, we're doing pretty interesting things, and we've been working with various health systems in the recent times and created a differentiated play. As far as what we are differentiating specific to the segments of provider, there are three things that we work. We help the customers in terms of their priorities of what they can do more with less.
Okay.
How we can drive transformation in terms of creating new forms of value, leveraging cloud. And the third thing is how do we drive improved security posture for them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Three important topics for every CIO out there, CTO. That's really interesting. What do you think are some of the biggest shifts you're seeing in how healthcare organizations are reevaluating their cloud strategy?
Cloud is an operating model, and it really tried to create so much in the marketplace over last decade. And that said, you see customers falling into two categories. Someone that has embraced what it means to be in cloud, and they have a different set of opportunities and challenges. Someone that hasn't experienced cloud and trying to go for the first time, so they have a different type of considerations to make.
Sure.
But broadly, what they're looking at is that can I create new forms of value? If so, what does it do? Will I be able to improve my security posture? So how do I do it? And what it means for data sharing and what it means for my interoperability needs. So these are the considerations. And the other thing is that will I be able to create more of a risk mitigation for me in terms of where I am? Because we may be looking at, let's say, running on-prem, and if I go to cloud, will I get inherent disaster recovery and BCP? Will it reduce my risk and exposure? So these are the conversations that everyone is trying to think about it. But it requires a mindset, and it requires a different type of considerations from going where they are to where they need to be, and which means a lot of other things that need to happen before you actually foray into it. But the customers that are already there, for them is like, hey, I went there, but did I realize all the benefits that I was expected to?
Oh, that's interesting.
That second thing is, are there any other things that I can do? What are the other newer innovations that the cloud is offering? Whether it be AI, whether it be machine learning, whether it be incremental additions to what I can bring to my business, and what kind of value that I'm generating, and more importantly, am I actually in a better place in terms of my operating model? Should I be constantly looking for something else from a continued innovation perspective?
Sure.
So that's where both sides are opportunity as far as where we are. So this is a constant exercise of how you really care and feed, and folks that are trying to embrace, folks that have already embraced, but how do you make sure that you're constantly bringing incremental value to your journey to cloud?
Yeah, that's interesting. You talk to a lot of healthcare leaders and hear their perspectives. Are there some common challenges or maybe misconceptions that leaders should be aware of as they build their cloud strategy?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The misconceptions, I would say, cloud is very cheap, right? So,
Yeah.
and automatically I'm going to be saving costs.
Okay.
And cloud is inherently secure. And so you have to understand that you got to be able to respect what the responsibility model is in
Okay.
terms of where I am actually supposed to do certain things. and what cloud is going to offer, and what kind of change in my talent mix that I need to be prepared to. So there is an organizational change in the mindset that I have to be ready with. And with respect to data sharing and arrangements of how I'm going to be looking at it, so you got to look at that the customers that are experiencing in some other healthcare organizations, the same thing may not work for you. So you got to think that whatever works for them automatically does not work for you. You have to make sure that you have to understand what a value creation is for your organization and what that journey is. So making sure that you have a right partner and giving you the guidance in a manner that you maximize the value, and are you prepared to actually get the right outcomes in your journey, and then just don't fall for the misconceptions that everything is going to be automatic and that you don't have to do anything.
Interesting. Well, I mean, kind of to your point, the public versus private cloud debate has been going for quite a while now, right?
Yeah.
In healthcare, the conversation is less about which is better. I think it's more about which workloads should be in the cloud, in the public cloud versus the private cloud. Especially with the regulatory environment and things like that. How should these digital health leaders think about balancing the scalability, security, the flexibility when adopting various hybrid or multi-cloud models? How do they approach that? Because I think it is workload specific, right?
Correct. So when you're looking at, again, it's an operating model, and you should look at what's the workload-aware infrastructure choices that they should think about. Mm-hmm. So that's what we are programmed to work with the customer in doing a right assessment in terms of where they're today, and where we unlock the value by virtue of workload-aware infrastructure choices that we can design and go through the full continuum in terms of like advisory, perform assessments, and then think about what choices. And once you make the choices, but you got to complete the full life cycle in terms of migrations and manage and operate and make sure that you are constantly optimizing it. So once you go there, you just have to care and feed, and how do you handle it? And with respect to the way you look at from a strategic choices, you just have to think about do you have the right architecture, and do you have the right data sharing and interoperability considerations, and what it means for you, and do you have right security protocols for making sure where the responsibility model is going to be a shared one, as opposed to like expecting that everything is going to be automatic. And do you have talent to really take care of? How do you go through the full life cycle? Are you working with the right partners in order to maximize the whole continuum of it? And finally, is it just a moment for providing a housing for infrastructure? So you have to see this is beyond infrastructure. You got to think about what value cloud is offering and what value you're bringing back to the business. So you have data, which is an IP for most of the health systems and almost all of the health systems. And how do you take this data as an insight, and then what are you driving with the data, and what type of advantages that cloud is offering, and which means that you're constantly thinking about fueling innovation besides running the operations for where you're today. And all of this need to be done in a manner, whether you do it with a partner, do it in-house, you just have to make sure that you have a structured approach of doing it in a programmatic fashion, as opposed to trying to do everything at once.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you highlighted a number of the common pain points, I think, that healthcare leaders are facing. Are there some others, that you see really stand out that are these common pain points? I mean, you talked about the cybersecurity one. I think that's an interesting one. What are some of the big, pain points that you see healthcare leaders facing today?
So almost everyone is asked to drive optimization. Health systems are facing financial challenges. So the overall revenue and margin profile is changing for health systems. And whether it be reimbursement cuts, whether it be value-based care initiatives, and the payment models are changing, so and hence their revenue profile has changed. And more importantly, some of the health systems are still coming back post-COVID in terms of making sure that their entire revenue pattern for structured and scheduled procedures, so they are still getting caught up in terms of making sure that their revenue posture pre-COVID to post-COVID is still still yet to get balanced. What is driving is that optimization is extremely important, and in today's inflationary environment, and for them is to sustain in this particular cost pressures, so they got to do more with less. So which means that the CIO, CTOs are being asked about what can I really look at it? How do I create a new operating model in terms of where am I doing and what am I doing, and how do I optimize my overall cost positioning? And that's a fundamental thing. But at the same time, it's not just the only thing that you do. So you are constantly asked to do transformation, which means what additional value that you are bringing to the business. So that's a balancing act. So you got to run the business, you have to change the business. Running the business in an optimized cost structure requires set of considerations. Changing the business with fueling innovation requires different set of considerations. So how can you balance both of them is one of the most important balancing act that they have to do. But yet the threat landscape in healthcare is changing. We've seen series of events and incidents last year, and we continue to see that is changing by the day. So which means that the security posture that you got to have is front and center of every conversation that you have, whether it be cloud or otherwise. The fact that you are looking at bringing new vendors, new solutions, new capabilities, so it has to start with the security first. So it's very, very important. Yeah. So the fact that you are trying to change an operating model, so you make some considerations, you are entertaining a dialogue with partners, but you got to think about the change management internally in terms of gaps in your talent. How do you make sure that you are programmed to do certain things in the current ecosystem? So you got to think about how do you really bring new talent, and how do you augment, and how do you balance it? And that's on the technology side of the house. So the talent shortage is also hurting the health systems on the clinical side of the house, as much as the industry forces are changing on them. And when you combine all of it, it's an added pressure for the CIO, CTOs. But from a CEO and CFO's point of view, so they have to think about programmatically the change management across the health system in making sure that the revenue and margin expectations for where they run. But at the same time, the most important thing is how do you drive expectations for consumers in the communities for making sure that the digital enablement of everything that you're doing is matching up to the expectations of the communities. So it's a constant exercise of innovation in a programmatic fashion. So essentially create new forms of value in an incremental fashion. Wow. And almost everything is a tech-enabled business these days. So they have to take IT and technology as a means for them to drive this. And health systems are really catching up to that particular speed in the recent times. The opportunity is immense, and cloud is playing a key role. And we are very well positioned in terms of doing the right thing. And anyone that is associated in the operating model of cloud is very well placed in terms of what they can do for healthcare organizations.
Yeah. Well, and I think there is a talent shortage. And if you have the wrong talent, then you have some cybersecurity problems because they're not
Correct.
securing it properly. And in some places, you can't find the talent. It's just not there, let alone that it's competitive even
Correct.
in big cities. So, yeah, that's interesting to hear. What should healthcare leaders understand about the value of cloud? You talk a lot about, the value that's being created that maybe they don't talk enough about.
Right. The value creation starts with respect to what are you trying to uncover. It's we've been saying cloud is an operating model, and what does it mean by that operating model when you deploy it? Are you trying to run the business? Are you trying to change the business? Are you doing both of them? And that requires a balanced total cost of ownership. So which means you got to understand how are you really looking at it. Today, most of them are programmed to look at it for fact that, hey, my total cost of ownership is driven by CapEx-based measurement historically, and that is changing by the way of how financial measures are deployed. And that being said, how do you balance between your CapEx and OpEx, spend, and how do you make sure that your total cost of ownership is balanced? Very important. And the second thing is that when you look at what is your IP and what you're trying to do, and data is an IP, and which means that what are you trying to do in terms of what do you go back to the business, how do you bring business into the discussion of what value creation means. There is so much happening in the world of AI, so much happening in the world of machine learning, what it means for them in creating incremental value. So that's extremely important for making those considerations.
Exactly.
So we are programmed to look at beyond just running, let's say, private or public cloud, hybrid cloud operations. So what can we do for researchers that are programmed to do genomics research? And how do you design capital light approach for bringing, because otherwise, like, hey, GPU as a service is something that you can always look at it, but you got to make cost considerations for what you are looking for. So you got to think about an approach of how you unlock value, yet again optimally run and optimally change the business with right cost considerations. And the other point that I would say, John, you got to think about how do you reduce the risk exposure when you're going into a journey. Will you automatically get DR, BCP as inherent coverage of cloud that sort of reduces your ability of what you are put up today? Because most of the health systems, they only run without having proper DR, or maybe having DR that is namesake and not fully functional. So which means you are bringing so much of a risk. So it's not about whether or not, it's about when. So you should have that mindset when you are running any of your operations today. So which means when you go into a journey, how do you make sure that that is inherent and reduce the risk by virtue of making sure that you are getting a default DR and that is functional, and make sure that your BCP measures in the event, even if you do it. So you have something like, let's say, cyber recovery, cyber wall. So something that you are making considerations for what does it do and how do you make sure that you're not putting business in risk. So that mindset is important. So which means that change is a constant thing that you just have to programmatically do it by making sure that you constantly train the team and elevate the skill set of the organization. Make sure that you are balancing it in the right order.
Wow. I mean, there's a lot to think about for healthcare organizations, and I think what's clear is every healthcare organization realizes they need some sort of cloud partner.
Yeah.
They need a cloud strategy that includes the right partners to be able to help them execute, and whether that's their Epic in the cloud, or whether that's other applications in the cloud, or whether it's a public cloud, whether it's their DR in the cloud. Everyone's looking at this. So I appreciate you taking time to talk with us and share your insights and perspectives to help them improve on their approach to cloud. So I appreciate it, and thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you want to find more great healthcare IT content like this, be sure to check it out at healthcareittoday.com or search for Healthcare IT Today on your favorite podcasting application. Thanks, PV.
Thank you, appreciate, Jan, and I really enjoyed the dialogue, and looking forward to continued collaboration and making sure that all the good things that we're doing is something that we continue to amplify through your channel, and also let the audience get to know more about us.
Thanks, PV.
Awesome. Thank you.